Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Absolute Geek Podcast. I am Matt.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Bryan.
That's right. Tonight with us, we have a special guest from what Tales from the Flipside, right?
Come on, you know it. You got to give me. There you go. I just got to say, I will not be at the barbecue this weekend. I do not condone eating of your dog. And to all the Flipside fans out there, you know, both of them that are listening, hopefully that are listening, all two of you. I just want to know I do not condone eating of your dog.
I do know the name of the show. I just had to give him a quick rib. From Tales from the Flipside, we have Bryan with us. How's it going, Bryan?
It's going great, brother. Love to be here. Stoked. Like I said, I am a super fan. Or like you said, I am a super fan.
We appreciate you filling in for Jose. Why don't you go ahead and tell our audience who may have heard you a long, long time ago on our show a little bit about yourself and what you guys do over at Tales from the Flipside.
Well, we just basically talk about collecting and flipping. The main goal of the show is giving people ideas about how to make a little money. Most of the show is about that, you know, how to flip stuff, mainly comics, toys. We're getting into some other things. We started talking about sports cards and garbage pail kids, just crazy stuff. It's, you know, a lot of that stuff that we enjoyed from our childhood. So we do a little bit of the pop culture talking, and you know, but I think you guys do a really good job of that. So we stay out of that lane.
Move over, let the big boys work.
Yeah, not that it's, you know, not a lane that's already pretty much oversaturated as it is, but you know, what are you gonna do?
But yeah, if you guys ever want to check it out, it's CBSI presents Tales from the Flipside. Matt and Kyle know about CBSI. It's a really cool community of people that talk about speculating on comics and you know, how to flip books and what's hot and what's coming, and it's become more of a community than anything. So it's just a cool place to hang out and talk about speculating on comic books. And there's comicbookinvest.com is the website, and that's where you can check out you know, most of the articles and stuff like that.
You know, the best thing about CBSI, this is one of my favorite parts, is, you know, you go into a lot of these groups and you go into a lot of these people where you want to talk about comics with people, and a lot of people are dicks.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, is being a part of this group is the best part is you ask a question, there's no sarcasm, there's no one being an asshole. There's people, you know, who genuinely love what they do. They love reading books, they love selling them, they love talking about it. And so, you know, even if it is a regurgitated topic, people still don't mind giving their input and telling you and helping you and pushing you in a good direction. And you know what, and that's what the best part about it is there's no negativity. And I really enjoy that.
It's really become that community thing. You know, there's different places for different things, of course. You know, everywhere there's, you know, little rules and stuff to where how you do things. But as Kyle said, you know, there's places for you to you know, just be a comic fan. There's the forum on the website. There is a G+ community, Google+ community. And that's a really cool place just to, you know, get a feel for CBSI, and that's kind of where it started. And then Comic Book Invest was kind of created just to. The best way that I like to tell people about it is, it almost feels like Wizard magazine for the internet age. A lot of people might know about the top 10. We kind of do a top 10. You know, one of my co-conspirators on Tales from the Flipside is the guy that does the top 10 over there, and it feels like you know, reading a Wizard magazine, but on the internet. So it's a cool place. If you haven't heard about it and you haven't had a chance to check it out, check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, that is pretty dope. So, I mean, since you listen to the show, our community knows a little bit about kind of the speculation as much as Kyle, who's more into it than I am, kind of can lay it out. So, for someone who doesn't know what all goes into the comic book speculation, can you kind of lay it out for them a little bit, and maybe if they're looking to get into it, where they should start and kind of
I think comics has always had the group of people that are there just to read comics. But I think there was a big push back in the late 90s that happened in both the comic book industry and the sports card industry of these things can be worth money. Unfortunately, back then it kind of fizzed and popped, and it ruined the community, not the communities, but the speculation community for a while. But over the past, I'd say, I don't know, Kyle, what about 5-6 years now? The comic book speculation community has just gone crazy, and you can make a lot of money. Excuse me, a lot of money off of doing a little bit of homework, seeing what's hot out there right now. For a while it was all about, okay, which character is going to show up in the next TV show, which movie is coming out. Let's go find that first appearance and put it up on eBay and make some money off of it. And that still happens, to a large effect, but it's getting even deeper in that because it's bringing a lot of people back into the comic book community who haven't been there for a while, who now are going, oh man, I got a lot of these cool comics that I might be worth some money. And then they're getting involved in the spec community on top of getting involved in the whole pop culture community. And it's just become massive. So there's ways to make money out there. Anybody out there who says, oh, you need to go to college to make money nowadays, you need to go do this. Listen, the internet's a beautiful place. You get yourself $10 and a phone, and you can make some money. Go to a Goodwill, do some research, flip a few items, comic books, toys, T-shirts, whatever. There's ways to make money out there, and comic books is a great way to do it right now. So that's kind of what the speculation community is about, speculating on which is the next hot book, which is the next hot character. And I mean, there's some books. I think Kyle's talked about it a lot on this show, and the whole Thanos saga with Ghost Rider, Space Ghost Rider, and that Raphael Albuquerque book. That book was, came out, and it was a 1 in 25 variant that was, $10-20 when it first came out, and within 2 weeks, people spec'd on it being a big character in a first appearance, and it turned into, I bought mine for $30. And I sold it for $800 2 weeks later. So
Jesus,
yeah, that's
insane.
Yeah, that's just and I felt like an idiot because I remember telling Kyle, man, if I would have held on that book two more weeks, I could have sold it for $1,500.
Yeah, but part of the spec market too is sometimes you hold on, and we've both learned this from selling books. Is we'll wait 2 more weeks, but sometimes that 2 more weeks
too long.
It makes it from a $50 book to an $18 book.
Yeah, rule 1 of the speculator's game is to always be cool with whatever money you make. You buy a book for $5, you sell it for $10, you're in the positive, right? So me and Kyle kind of started this in the beginning. We had a little thing going where we were just speculating on books to make money to buy other books. It wasn't a thing about making money to, quit your job or anything like that. It was just to be able to pay for your, Wednesday comics. And you can do really well at it if you stick to it. You can also make some mistakes, but that's how you learn along the way.
It's a hard thing because it's like any side hustle type of thing you do. It's work.
Yes.
Nothing. Very rarely does anything fall in your lap.
You got it.
We would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning so we could hit yard sales, and so we can be at at places that we knew were selling books. And it's you got to be at your local. That hot book is coming out on Wednesday. Like the new hot book last week that came out, it was the Teen Titans Annual.
Yeah, first appearance of Crush, right?
Yep, that's a I even got off early on Wednesday, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to be there at 11 o'clock. The comic book store opens at 9. I bought the reader copy that you got to that you can thumb through before you decide to buy it. The one that's not bagged and boarded. That was the last one, and I was there 2 hours after it opened.
It's a very hard thing to do nowadays because there's so many people doing it. But the cool thing about, you can find these places like CBSI that will teach you the little ins and outs. And hey, it's like Kyle was saying, a lot of us, have families and we have a 9-to-5 job, and this is kind of what we do, to have fun. So it's very hard to be that person, that Wednesday Warriors, every Wednesday, the first in line, that's getting your books, that knows about everything. But you can make positive gains along the way and cool little things. And I tell you what, I've gone from being that speculator that was just in on everything to we could talk about this some other time or later on, but I'm almost getting to the point where I'm trying to get out of the game as much as possible and just keep it to a certain few things, because the game has gotten really, really deep, and it's a big hustle nowadays, and there's a lot of people making money. And when I say a lot of people, I mean big comic companies like Marvel and DC, this whole, variant, specials, internet store variants and store variants, that is just, it's, in my opinion, it's destroying the market right now. And
we'll look at the Batman 50 that's coming out next week.
There we go.
There is going to be, I mean, I don't know, scrolling through, Facebook and everywhere that you look, emails, I'm getting emails from people that I don't even know how they got my email to buy their store exclusives. I mean, there's hundreds of them. I don't know how many feeds I've seen of, that everybody has a store variant now.
Well, there's a fine line. There's a fine line that's being played right now with the comic, these big comic companies like Marvel and DC, and the speculators market and the internet. And what it is, a lot of the speculation market is played using variants. And back, I've had this conversation with Matt, many moons ago about variants. And I know he wasn't a fan of variants when they first came out, right, Matt? I mean, that was one of the things that used to drive you nuts, is the whole variant market.
Yeah.
And what's going on now is even worse. I mean, it's variants on steroids. And what's happening is, because the speculator market realized, variants are you could buy a variant for $20 and sell it sometimes for, like I said, $800 the next week. But what they figured out is, okay, these companies, Marvel and DC, are letting us buy store variants. So I can say I'm an internet store, and I can contact Marvel and pay $10,000 to get my store variant. They give me a list of artists to choose from. I pick my artist. My artist does my store variant, puts my name on it, and I sell my store variant. Well, here's the thing that these companies did, is they said, okay, store variants will be included in the ratio variants. So these internet store variants, some of these guys aren't that all, ethical. And they looked at it and they went, okay, we're going to tell everybody that our store variant is only 500 copies, and that's it. Well, in order to get a store variant, you have to buy 3,000 copies through Marvel. So not only are they saying they have more than they have, they're also using those 3,000 copies to get the ratio variants. And now these ratio variants, who are 1 in 25, you would think that they're rare. Well, if they're printing, 1 million copies of Spider-Man 800, how many ratio variants are out there? There's a lot of ratio variants out there. 1 in 25 and 1 in 50 isn't very rare anymore. Nope. So this is the kind of thing that happens. And I'm really worried myself that it's same thing that's going to happen with the whole, 90s, Death of Superman and printing, 1 million copies of X-Men 1 and Spider-Man 1, and, how it ruined comics back in the late 90s, early 90s. I think that we're heading that direction, and I really don't want to see it, because that worries me, because that's what got me out of comics and got me out of collecting. And I hope we're not seeing that, because part of me is the majority of my collecting is speculating in some way. I will always buy my key books that I like to collect, but a lot of the stuff that I enjoy looking at, and it's like a treasure hunt. You go out there and you buy these books and you can flip them for a quick buck, and it's always fun to search for that deep treasure, but they're ruining it.
So now what do you say to someone who comes to you on the opposite side and says, I think and I feel like the speculation market is hurting the comic book industry from a standpoint of the local, just small everyday collector who has no intention of selling them? Because you got the speculation game going now, and then now you're seeing more and more comic shop owners getting into this, and they're more and more aware of what's going on. So now you have this book coming out, and now they want to sell it for the hot eBay price or the hot going price of it now. So that kind of screws over the little guy who's just the everyday, maybe regular reader who wants to buy that book for cover price. And then you have the shop owner going, oh, well, no, this book's going for this amount on eBay, so this is what we're charging for it.
I say you're right. I say that's the unethical people out there I'm talking about. You're 100% right, Matt. And that's one of the reasons why I feel it's a fine line that we're walking these days in the speculator game. And I really think that you have to kind of weed those type of peoples out of your dollar says a lot, and not just your dollar. It's very easy to get angry at these types of unethical people and then go and bitch and complain and on their sites and da-da-da. Well, unfortunately, you bitching and complaining on their sites helps them more than you just not doing anything. And then you go and what you should do is just go to a seller that is ethical and pump him up. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing. But the other thing is that you're 100% right, Matt. There's a fine line there you got to tread very carefully on. And
that's what drives me crazy about variants, or did for a while. It's like you got people out there like J. Scott Campbell, for instance. He doesn't really do interiors for books. He does covers, and you get a cover from him, and his covers are way more expensive.
And they're trash.
Right, and now you have to specialty order them through his website.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's becoming very fine. You got to tread carefully, man. And these artists need to realize that there's very few artists nowadays rightfully so. I understand where they're coming from. For the longest time, they weren't making the money that were being made off of them. They felt like they should be getting some of that money. So I understand where some of these artists like Adi Granoff and J. Scott Campbell are creating their own quote unquote stores so they can do their own store variants, right? And I understand that. To me, I think that's how it should have always been. But unfortunately, this is where we as the consumer and we as the people in the community need to use our dollars and use our voice to say what we agree with and what we don't agree with. And it's very important for people out there to go, this is what's going on, and this is what I think. Now, I hate to say it, but it can get very hardcore in any community where you've got certain communities going, at each other. That's the dark side of the internet sometimes is, you always got somebody that's causing trouble in one community that's going to, hey, sorry, you're causing too much trouble. We got to get rid of you. They're going to go start their own community, and their whole idea is just to bash, the community that kicked them out.
Yeah, his name is Mike Wheeler.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's a perfect example. And, those are the type of people that instead of, I think you guys did a really good thing with him. I think that you guys put him on the spotlight, the small spotlight that you wanted to put him on, just to show everybody what a, unethical person he is. And then you killed it, because it's much better just to not give him any of that spotlight anymore. Let him drown himself. And that's exactly what you guys did. So there's ways to deal with those people. There's also ways to deal with, unfortunately, there's ways to deal with those people like you're talking about, these comic book stores that are jumping on eBay every time a book comes out. Now, here's the problem with that. And Kyle knows this very well because we both had the same local comic shop, and our local owner decided to stop selling weekly books because he just wasn't making money off them. And Diamond was making a ton of money off of him, and he wasn't making money off of, the $8,000 to $10,000 a month he was spending at Diamond, or a week, I think it is, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was a large amount, but I think
I have my speculations on that whole situation. I think there's more to that story than what's come out.
I think there is. I think
there's always
you're
more
right.
to it.
Yes,
There's always more to it. There's always two sides of the story or whatever. But I think with having a comic book shop, having a great backstock is great and stuff. But I think that's the good thing of a comic book shop is having those new issues. That's what brings people in.
I think what these new owners are going to have to do is they're going to have to start playing more towards a box holder than anything else, because what kills them is that they order, the box holder books, and then they order, 20, 30 books, even up to 50 books on top of that just to set out. And sometimes not only will you not sell all your box holder books right away, but you won't sell but 5% of the books you put out on, as non-box holder books. So as long as they're just saying, hey, we're just going to fill our box holder things now, and if you want new weekly books, you're going to have to open up a box. And for most stores nowadays, it doesn't cost anything to open a box. So you can't say, well, I don't want to pay the money to open a box. And that's going to have to be you're going to have to give and take. And as a comic buyer and a comic store owner, you're going to have to play down the middle. And unfortunately, there's always going to be those people that are going to want to be an ass about it. So it's tough, man.
That's when the shady side of things come in, though, because you have these store owners filling their boxes, but they want these variants. So they're filling orders to get these high dollar variants. Then they're not selling them to the customer that walks in the door. They're selling them they go right on eBay to people who are going to pay way more than they should.
Yeah. And that's why there's a fine line that is being tread on. And not only do the comic store owners, the comic buyers, and the comic publication company, Marvel and DC and Image, they need to realize and see what's going on out there, because it's becoming a major issue. And it's a bummer. I don't like what I see happening.
And I see like these Facebook auction groups, I think, are kind of starting to should be more at blame too, because you have people out there doing these auctions on Facebook, and you're watching people buy trash for $200, $300, $400, and you're like, dude, that's like a $10 book. You look on eBay and it's on there for $10 book, but these dudes are buying them up for mad crazy amounts of money. And then you have Joe Schmo who stumbles in there who's like, oh, I've got that book, and then he tries to sell it for that amount of money, and it's just like it creates some like weird inflation on straight garbage that shouldn't be sold for that amount of money.
That's why I think that these communities like CBSI and some of the other communities out there, it's important for the buyer to educate themselves. And there's a lot of people who are jumping back into this collecting game on Facebook who maybe had not seen it any other places just because they didn't search it out, and they just, somebody appears in their timeline going, hey, I got this comic book auction. They go, hell yeah, I used to collect comic books. I'm going to jump in. And they aren't, it's kind of like calling, retirees and going, hey, I've got a gold mine in Botswana, but in order to get it, you got to give me $500,000, and then I'll give you the $2 million that I can pull out of there. You know what I mean? It's like you got to educate yourself, and a lot of people aren't doing that.
I've got two theories on the comic book auctions. Like, I like them. I enjoy them. I enjoy the live comic book auctions. I buy a lot of books off of them. But on the same note, I know where to stop. I know what I'm willing to pay for something. I know what things are worth. So that's, I mean, I'm more the one that educated. I think it comes down to two things. One, like you guys were saying, I think it's the person coming back in, and especially with older books. Oh man, I remember when I had that. I want that back.
Nostalgia.
And yep. I think that's a lot of it. And I think a lot of it also is, okay, when you're auctioning something and you're bidding on something, and it's live, and I think you get this rush, and I think you're like, and you can get it. It's right there. You have the potential to own it. You don't have to look anymore. It's there. And I think people, what they do is they overbid it because they know they can have that one right now. You know what I mean? And they don't have to do any more searching. It's there. They know they can get it. Yep. And I think you get caught up in that, oh, I can finally just have it. So you're willing to, you just keep shilling out that, that $1 and that $2 and that $4 bid. And then you're like, And then you get so far where you're just like, fuck, now I'm not going to get it. And I think that's just what people do. I think those are the scenarios that come up.
It's always important to be an educated collector in whatever you're collecting. Don't waste your money.
And and sometimes I wouldn't say spend $200 on a $10 book, but if you really want the book, it's okay. If you really want the book for your collection, you've really wanted it, and it's that $10 book, it's $10, and you spend $13 on it, whatever. You wanted it, it was there. I don't think it's a big deal spending a buck or two more on something if you really want it, and it's worth it.
But now you have them becoming online con men, though, because there's times, and I'm not going to name any names, where you and I watch, you'll invite me to a comic book auction, and we're sitting here and like, what is going on? Like, why are you paying this much money for this fucking book?
I don't think they're con men as much as the people are just, and it always boils back down to, it's only worth what you're going to pay for it. So if you want to, and it's human nature, it's $10, but this guy's willing to give you $100. It's hard to say no to it. And I understand, you know what I mean?
I say comment in the fact that you have these people that are doing the streams they'll just quit. If the book doesn't sell for what they want, they get pissed off and they shut the stream down. Or if you try to stop somebody or say, hey dude, what are you doing? You try to give them that little advice, they get pissed off and you get banned or whatever. Like it's like, if you try to like, dude, like you're going to blow $200 on this book that you can go buy, right now for $3 on eBay. I understand you're taking a sale away from, but you're also kind of protecting someone from being stupid.
Yeah, the way you spend your money is says a lot about not only you, but it's also, you hold a lot of power in that dollar. So, educate yourself on, if you're spending a lot of money, it's no matter what you're spending that money on, you need to know what you're buying and who you're buying it from, no matter what it is. So I think that's why it's always safe to do a little bit of, education. And the internet is an amazing place. You can find something out in less than 5 minutes, and most comic auctions, take 10 minutes. So do a little research.
And when I have the comic book auctions up too, like, I don't know every price of every book out there. That's impossible. What I do with these comic auctions is I watch it on my phone, and I have my computer up, and I have like eBay and stuff up, and I'll be putting in prices and seeing what they're going for, and and that's how I'm also making up to the second decisions on books I want to spend.
The other thing is that something that we forget is, living in a big city like we do, there's a lot of people out there that don't live anywhere near a comic book store, and maybe the only place they're buying their books is online. I'm not saying that's right for them to spend, waste their money or to be taken advantage of. But I think that's also a lot of the things with these comic book auctions is there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't know there's a comic book store on the corner, 2 miles from them, or there isn't a comic book store on any corner around them.
Yeah, so, I mean, in a lot of these comic auctions, you see people, and they are 2 hours away from their local comic book shop. And, a 4-hour round trip is that's a lot of time. That's
especially for every Wednesday.
Yeah, and a lot of time for gas, a lot of personal time. What's your time worth? So if you're going to buy that $10 book for $20, it's probably cheaper than the 4 hours you spent in your car plus your gas, plus your personal time.
Wouldn't you just look at going to like, somewhere like, God, what's the comic shop in New York?
Midtown.
Wouldn't you just look at order like from Midtown, or
I don't know how many times
company like that?
I don't know how many times I've gone on Midtown and the book's been sold out.
Yeah, I think Midtown and a lot of those comic shops are selling newer stuff, and a lot of these comic auctions on Facebook are selling old school, like
silver and bronze stuff.
Exactly. And people, hey, I'll even admit it, man. Bronze has become the new silver, and silver has become the new gold. So golden age books are too expensive right now to buy. So people have jumped on the next big thing, and it's hard to find some of those bronze age books and silver age books. And also, here's the other thing. There's no denying that comic books have become a major investment. And most of them, if you know what you're doing, if you can go out and find a book that it's pretty rare, and it's rare in a certain grade, and you can get it for a decent price, and you do a little bit of education on what that book's, you can go look up GPA, and there's websites that say how much books have sold for in the past, and they're constantly gaining in value. I mean, shoot, you look at Amazing Fantasy 15, that book is ridiculous, the amount of money it sells for. In like a 1.0 grade, that's like, thousands of dollars. So there is money to be made here. I guess that's kind of, that's what I enjoy about it. But it's always, there's another dog, add to the Barbie.
Shut that dog up.
There's always money to be made. It's just very good to use places like podcasts and the internet groups and these places that are available to you to educate yourself. And also, here's what really grabbed me to CBSI and got me to be part of the Tales from Flipside podcast is these guys became my friends. I may have never met them face to face, but these guys have become, good friends, and you create these within these communities. You create these relationships with people that you never would before. And I'll go out to my mailbox every once in a while, and there'll be a book there that, one of these guys said, "Hey, I found this, and here it is. I know you collect The Watcher, so here's a cool book. It's yours." Or I've told the story before, and I may have told it on this show before. You guys know about it. When I first joined CBSI, my brother got diagnosed with bone cancer, and it was Christmas Day, like a week before he had gotten diagnosed. And Christmas Day, I was supposed to send out a bunch of books to a buddy within CBSI. Actually, the guy who started CBSI, Trey Kenyon, was supposed to send out a bunch of books to him. And he said, and it was like a week before I was supposed to send out these books. And he said, "Hey, I hadn't got your books. I just want to make sure everything's okay." And this was like 2 days before Christmas. And I said, "Nah, man, I've been having some family issues. I'll be sure to get those books to you soon." And he goes, "Well, is everything okay?" And I said, "Well, no." And I let him know what the skinny was and what was going on. He said, "Hey, what can I do? Is there something we can do?" And I said, "No, I appreciate it, man. But we're just going to, try to muscle through it." And he said, like an hour later, he contacts me and he says, "Hey, we're going to hold a raffle, and we're going to do it tomorrow. And all the proceeds we want to give to help your brother." And my brother had a GoFundMe page. They held a raffle. Within 2 days, there was, $2,000 in my brother's account from CBSI. So that's a perfect example of you find the right community, no matter what it is. Facebook communities, any type of community, if it's the right place, they call them communities for a reason. And it's not just about, making money off of comic books. You create relationships. So
absolutely. And I mean, that's why, I advocate for this. And I think all three of us advocate for this community as hard as we do, is because this community is pretty much accepting of everyone. Yeah, you might get the occasional, you're a poser or you're a filthy casual, whatever. But I think that, I partake in a lot of different communities, like the video game community and online gaming or PC gaming and all that. I feel like this is the least volatile community out there, where we kind of accept everybody.
You're 100% right.
We've always got, you always see people holding auctions and trying to help everyone out. And I think that's what makes this community so great. I just want to put out there, if you guys are watching live, you can leave comments in the chat and I can see them. You don't have to email them. I got an email here from a Glenn that says, "Hey, great show so far, guys. This is a really interesting topic. I'm glad I tuned in. First time listener. I have a question for Bryan. You're talking about the speculation market. I want to know what your opinions are on maybe holding on a book to see if it comes around on the back end. It seems like I have a first appearance of Spider-Gwen that was dropping in price. I've held on to it, and now it seems to be coming back up. Just curious about your thoughts. Thanks for taking the time, guys. Keep up the great work."
I think that is a perfect example of the speculation game. And I know, Matt, I know that this is a book that you've owned. I know, Kyle, this is a book you've owned. And I
still own that book.
Yeah, I still own
it too.
I think we all still own it. And I think we all still own it maybe for the same reason that I'm about to talk about. And this is a perfect example, Glenn, of the speculation market. That book came out and it was hot right off the bat. I think that book was probably like a $40 book like a week after it came out. And it went as high as, I want to say, $80 maybe. And then it started to fall off. As a matter of fact, that book also had a variant to it. It was like a 1 in 50, I believe. I can't remember the ratio, but it was a variant.
1 in 50.
Yeah. And so that variant is now I want to say it's like a $3,000 book. And the Spider-Gwen book itself is selling for like almost $200 raw. Does that sound right?
Last time I checked, that's about what it was.
Yeah, it had gotten, and that's the crazy thing about announcements is, and that's what's cool about some of these groups is you kind of see what everybody's kind of muttering about and talking about, and I'm sure Brian's the same way, but I probably have a short box full of books that I've bought in hopes that, because of mutterings and talkings and stuff, that one day I hope to be able, I have 4 or 5 or 6 of the books and they're just sitting in a short box. It's kind of like my speculation box. And I just throw stuff in there that I hope one day that turns around and I get to sell it. And more times than not, those books kind of just sit there. But I have a box that I'm just holding on to stuff, waiting for it to, to come back or to explode at one time, hoping that that's what happens with it.
Well, that Spider-Gwen book is something that a lot of speculators have been talking about for a while, and they talk about it because it'll get hot and it'll cool down. It'll get hot and cool down. The speculation market is a crazy game, and one of the things that I've learned is every speculator does it different. I went from being somebody who jumped on every new story about what character is going to be in the new Flash TV show and go search for that book or, whatever you can. And that's a tough game to play for me. For other people, it's very easy and it makes a lot of money. But if you can pick up on those first appearances, those go out and find, when that Spider-Gwen book had cooled off, every single one of us right now on this podcast should have been buying those up, when we could find them for cheap. Now it's easy to say that, hindsight is 20/20, but if I were Glenn, I would take that book. I would look at its condition. If the condition is 9.6, 9.8 worthy, I'd send it off, get graded, and I'd sell it the day after I get it graded.
And pay if you're really going to send something off to get it graded, I would pay the extra fee to get it back as fast as you can get it back.
Yep. CGC Fast Pass right now, I want to say it's maybe like 3 weeks wait time, and that's pretty damn good.
How much is the 2-day turnaround one? Is it like?
I can't remember what the 2-day turnaround cost is, but I mean, 2 weeks to wait for a graded book is absolutely amazing. And that's what CGC was running with for a while. I steer clear of CBCS right now. I've had, some issues with CBCS. I know they're doing a move, and there's some weird things going on with them. They're a great company. I think the move, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle, they're moving to Houston. Does that sound right? From Florida to Houston?
Dallas, Houston, somewhere in Texas like that, yeah.
And I know they're in the middle of that move, and I've had a little bit of issues. That's just personal, so I steer clear of them. But they're not a bad company. Definitely don't go anywhere near PGX. But CGC is always a good place, and you can go on their site. You can look up their wait time for their different tiers, and it's very easy to do. And there's nothing better than getting a box of freshly graded books in the mail.
Because I've actually been thinking about doing that with my Edge of Spider-Verse 2 book.
Edge of Spider-Verse 2, that first Spider-Gwen. And here's another. I'll give a little spec, on that book for you, Glenn. Take a good look at it. There was some errors that came out with that book. If you look at the background of that book, if there was 2 color variants that came out for that first print. There's one where it's dark black in the background, and then the normal version is almost like a maroonish, purplish black. If you have that dark black background, you got yourself a winner there, and I would put that book up as fast as possible. I might even sell it raw, depending on, how much money you're willing to make.
I'm going to look at mine now.
Yeah.
So Edge of Spider-Verse 2, that land variant is a 1 in 25 variant. There's one up on eBay right now, 9.6. It is currently sitting at $1,900 with 2 days left.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So
That's crazy.
That's unbelievable for a comic book, yet alone a comic book that is pretty new. So play that game, and if you play it right, you can make some good money to buy on a key, a personal grail. I think that's what me and Kyle both do. I've done really well selling some books and buying some personal grails. As you guys know, I was lucky enough to pick up a Walking Dead 1 and a Walking Dead full run. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Josh Garcia. I want to say I hope you enjoy those festivals. So it's always fun to sell books, to buy books. I wouldn't recommend anybody quitting their job to go sell comics right off the bat. It can be done, but there's always ways to make money out there, guys.
And I think that's one book that really drives the market too, is Walking Dead #1, and how that book exploded, and everyone's looking for that next, Amazing Fantasy 15, Detective #1, Action Comics #1. Everyone's looking for that next big book, and I think Walking Dead #1 kind of re-sparked that, and now people are just buying like crazy off speculation, hoping that they're going to hit that home run.
Well, I think that is something that's very interesting to talk about with you guys, because that's one of the things I listen to you guys about is I'm not a fan of the show. I'm not a fan of the show one bit, never have. I kind of watched it for a little bit and just got sick of it. You guys have become my news for that show. I enjoy you guys hearing you guys talk about it. But I did enjoy the comic much more than the show. Now I've fallen off lately on reading the book. So it's fun when you guys do your comic reviews every once in a while and you review Walking Dead and I can hear what's going on. But that's a perfect example of the speculation game. I mean, you guys talked about with Rick and Maggie getting ready to leave the show, and what is that going to do to the sale of those books? Now, if you look at what's going on right now, a lot of people feel like they need to get out of that market and they're selling some of their books. In my opinion, I think it's a great time to pick up Walking Dead keys. Now, if you want a full run and that's what you want for your personal collection, Kyle will tell you that there's nothing better than having a really clean and crisp Walking Dead full run if you're a Walking Dead fan. But I would stay away from non-key issues right now unless you want it for your personal, if Walking Dead's your personal grail book. But if I, one piece of advice about Walking Dead speculation, I'd pick up keys right now. One thing that blew me away the other day is I wanted to tell Kyle about this, so it's a perfect opportunity. The Walking Dead 100 Ruby Lucille variant. What do they call that book, Kyle? That book that was only
the red foil one.
Yeah, the red foil one. That book was just out of most people's price range for the longest time. I think it was like a $1,200 book, no matter what. And for some reason, with the news of the show, that's one of the books that's taken a hit, and people are buying that book for $250 to $500. For me, if you have that type of money to spend on a comic book, I think that would be a great book to buy. Especially because most of them are graded. That's a rare book. There's always something to be said about a book that's really rare. Not just says that it's rare, really rare.
That book was given only to comic book stores.
Yes, and there's only so many of them printed. Rarity is king in the speculation market, in my opinion, because really rare books will always hold value. Now, I'm not saying that it'll always hold $1,000 because obviously that one hasn't. But that is the type of book that if you can get it for cheap and put it away, just like Edge of Spider-Verse 2. If you would have gotten 20 books for, bought 20 copies of that for $10 a piece and put those away, just specking on it, like Kyle says, every good speculator has a long box full of books that they want to sit on. It's called the long hold. And I've got a couple of long boxes full of books where I'll, if I can go, my favorite thing is to go digging in dollar boxes and I'll find a stack of, Guardians of the Galaxy 20 and 21, which is like the first appearance of the symbiote planet And I know that they're going to start building on that whole symbiote thing in the movie verse. I picked up a stack of like 20 of those for like $20, and I'm putting those in the long hold box. So if there's books that you can put in the long hold box, that I don't think that it's a bad thing to take a chance on certain books like that. And Walking Dead Keys is one to take a chance on if you can keep an eye on them, do a little research, and pick them up for cheap.
Yeah, pick them up, because I mean, like, I have them, and I still look like I found one, this weekend where a guy is selling a First Appearance of Michonne.
Great book.
And great book, great cover, and it'll always be, and that'll always be a decent priced key to have. I mean, I got in on it when the bidding was, at like $60.
What did it end at, if you don't mind my asking?
It hasn't ended yet. I'm still.
Maybe we shouldn't talk about it. That's another thing that being a speculator, I always, it's another fine line to walk. Do you talk about the spec books that you don't own yet, right? I don't care. I like to talk about any hot spec that I know about. I usually talk about it. But that's another one of those weird things that people talk about. Oh, I have an issue with somebody. They call it the pump and dump. You're just talking about a book because you own it, or are you not talking about a book because you don't own it? So it's a fun little playground to play in.
I don't mind, I don't mind talking about stuff I think will be hot, because if I'm not the the end all be all if it's going to be. So it's your decision if you listen to me or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everybody who didn't pick up the Lemire Gideon Falls book. It just got announced. I think, what did it come out 2 weeks ago? It's now $100 book.
Yep, $100 book raw, if I'm not mistaken. And that's another key issue. If you can sell a book for a nice chunk of change raw and not graded, that's a big deal. That's a real big deal.
Well, you're not investing that extra money
or time, and time is a major issue when it comes to the spec game.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind too, especially with The Walking Dead, and when it comes to number one, is there's specific books that sell for this big money. There's specific covers that sell for this big money, because there's so many Walking Dead number one reprints out there, and like San Diego has a new variant every year, it feels like. And I know part of their anniversary Image is releasing kind of like DC did a few years ago with the black cellophane books, where you had to open them to find out what cover they were, and you could get a sketch cover, a black and white cover, or a colored cover. They're doing that with key issues of The Walking Dead. So it's like number one and number two, the first appearance of Michonne, 100.
That's cool.
So they're doing all that with that. So you got to keep in mind that also that it's not just because you have a Walking Dead number one, you need to make sure it's the right number one, and it's not just some off cover.
And there's something that I like to call the perfect storm with spec books, and it was kind of brought up earlier, and that is key appearances, first appearances, and then a good cover and a good artist or writer, and you can knock it out the park. And I think Walking Dead number one has become that perfect storm book because it has the ultimate spec thing, and that's rarity. I mean, I think there's only 7,000 printed.
Like 7,500.
So that's huge to begin with. The second thing is Tony Moore has become an outstanding artist and a lot of people's favorite artist. And, he only did a few of those Walking Dead, covers. So that's a Walking Dead cover. I think he only did the first 10 or 15. Is that right, Kyle?
Yeah.
So that's much. I thought it was only the first 4.
No, he did the Michonne cover.
Oh, yeah.
He stopped. So what Adlard started at 7.
Yeah.
He started doing the interiors, but Moore kept doing the art, the covers. I think actually, okay. I think 8. I think the first appearance of Michonne was his last cover.
So, and here's the other thing, they did that TV show. This is kind of going into your guys' territory. They did that the TV show Robert Kirkman have. What was the name of that TV show? The comic book history.
The history of comics.
There you go. And one of the things that I don't know if they talked about that I really was hoping they were going to talk about, I didn't think they would, is the whole history between Kirkman and Tony Moore. And for big fans out there that don't realize, those two guys came up together. They were best friends. They started a really small comic book company called Funkatron, and they had a really, their first comic book was one of my all-time favorite comic books, and it's a book called Battle Pope, and they were just, you know, really good friends, and then they hit it out the ballpark with Walking Dead, but nobody really caught on to that book right away. So, you know, you have the whole history of those two guys, you know, and how big of creators those guys have become. And in my mind, they're kind of like on a small scale. They're kind of like Kirby and Stan Lee. They can't stand each other now, from what I hear. And you know, they're always bickering and fighting, and they won't do books together. And here's a book where one of the books where they got their start. It's probably their most famous book. It's probably, as Matt was talking about, what everybody calls the Amazing Fantasy 15 of our, you know, generation. So I always think Walking Dead is a great pickup.
I would say even the first 5, if you can find the first 5, even the first 10.
Yeah.
But I would say that at least the first, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you can find those for a good price, I'd buy them up all day long.
But yeah, we'll switch gears here in a minute, but just one last kind of thing is, when you're speculating, you gotta be, like we've said through this entire thing, and I think Bryan can test it, you got to be careful, because the ceiling can fall out, or the floor can fall out, and the bubble can pop at any minute. Look at what happened with that and Ninja Turtles issue with the Death of Donatello. That was so hot for like a week, and then the bubble popped and it fell out.
What's crazy, if you read the previews for it, they told you that Donatello doesn't die, because it gave, you know what I mean? But, you know, and that's one thing about the internet too, is it's easy for something to run amok.
So, real quick, just before we change lanes, this will just be my little final thing on the spec market. I'll leave your listeners with some really good spec advice that I'm specking on right now. Everybody loves Adam Hughes. Not everybody, but a lot of people love Adam Hughes. To me, he's my favorite all-time artist. Todd McFarlane's up there as their favorite all-time artist too. And their covers are always hot. One of the things that I'm specking on right now, and that I'm keeping my eye out for, both those guys did a run of covers for each a different title, but the title they did it on was not very many people know about, and the covers are awesome. Both of them are reprint books, but the covers are different. For McFarlane, it's Marvel Tales. So what he did is they had a Marvel Tales that Marvel did, which was what was it, like just a reprint book of all of the Spider-Man books. And McFarlane came on and did covers for issue 223 through like 240, 239. Awesome covers. You can find them in dollar bins. You can pick them up on eBay right now for cheap, for sets. These books, if the speculation game plays like it usually does, I can see these books being great buys, good condition. Some of the covers are some of his best covers. And for Adam Hughes, it's the same thing. He did 9 covers. Let's see here, issue 71 to issue 79 of X-Men Classic. In my opinion, he's got 2 covers in that run, which are his 2 best covers. That's issue 79, which is an awesome reprint of the Phoenix Saga, and issue 77, which is an homage to an older X-Men book with Wolverine and Rogue on the cover. Killer covers by killer artists. And even though they're reprint interiors, the covers are brand new. And, you know, real, you know, speculators who have been doing their homework know about these books, but not very many people are picking up on them. So if you got a chance, there's 2, you know, little free cornbread crumbs that you can go jump on.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought you guys would like that.
Yeah.
That's some solid advice to give. That's cool.
Super awesome. So I want to switch gears real quick. I want to talk a little bit, and we can kind of still incorporate the speculation into it. But I want to talk about real quick and get your guys' opinion on Kyle's favorite love interest in Jared Leto. And what I don't understand what's going on, but to me, it feels like he's grasping at everything he can comic book related. He wants to do Suicide Squad. Now he wants to produce his own Joker movie when there's already one coming out. Now he's going to play Morbius. or Mobius.
Yeah. Morbius.
I don't even know what the announcement of that is going to do to the price of his first appearance, but
those books are hot right now. They've been hot for a while, and I think they've been hot because people have known that that's one of those characters that's got to show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe soon because it's such a good character.
But kind of leave you. What is your opinion on and now like it breaking away to where these villains are getting their own movies? Like I kind of feel like I don't know what it's going to do to the industry, but I feel like it's almost not a good idea because you're taking classic villains away from their source material to produce them for their own movies, and really for what reason?
I think it could be an issue, but I think it also can knock it out of the park. I mean, I know you guys give Kyle a lot of shit about Jared Leto, but I'm gonna blow you guys away right now. I'm a fan of Jared Leto's Joker. I am. I like it. Yeah, this is gonna be crazy. I know. I'm a fan of Jared Leto Joker. I'm not saying I don't think it couldn't have been done better in Suicide Squad movie. From what I hear, they had a lot more scenes that they did in that movie that they didn't release, and I think that could have been something kind of cool. I think I'm a big Jared Leto fan too, but I think that he's harshed on pretty hardcore, and I really think that his Joker wasn't as bad as everybody say. But now here he is playing two, similar roles, and can that be done? Chris Evans did it, right? So, and he killed it with Captain America. So.
And Ryan Reynolds, he's what? He played a horrible Deadpool. He played Green Lantern, and then now he's playing an awesome Deadpool.
It all depends on the writers of the script. I think Jared Leto's a killer actor. He's won Oscars. Some of his movies, for me, he'll always be considered a top actor, and his role as in American Psycho, the way he played that role, knocked it out of the park for that. So I'll always be a fan of him. But I think it all depends on the writing and how they shoot the movie. You guys were talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles last show, I believe, and Matt, you're 100% right. They have to go dark. They have to write that a certain way, or they're gonna. It's not going to do well. So it all depends on the writing and how they shoot a movie nowadays, because there's so many ways people can watch so many different movies. You have to pull them in with, something that's going to work.
I mean, I think that's what, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kyle. I think that's what works right now with these movies. And I think that's why the rated R superhero film like Deadpool is so popular. Not just because people like the character of Deadpool and that's what they want, but we live in a dark time right now with massive shootings. Like we just had another one yesterday, like massive shootings. We live in a dark time where I think people want that more dark, gritty superhero than the wholesome family. We ride with Marvel because we've been doing it for 10 years now, but I think there's a lot of people out there that want to see that more dark, gritty superhero movie, and that's, I think, really where Deadpool is fitting in, and that's why it's exploding as much as it is.
And it's not working for the other DC movies.
Well,
the dark gritty thing.
But
yeah, but it's cheesy at the same time.
They're doing it in a very cheesy way. Like I think that's why the Ninja Turtles has to go dark. They've done, you can't really measure up to the 90s movies, the first two. They tried with Michael Bay's and they failed. So they tried to go campy, family oriented, and it failed. So now you got to pivot and you got to kind of go darker, more comic book based to draw in the older audience that's looking for a more adult movie going experience. Because I can tell you, there's nothing worse than going to a movie theater and you're like, all right, nostalgia, and it's packed with a bunch of little kids. Like you kind of want that more adult, dark, gritty, more movie going experience.
I mean, I would like to see a darker Ninja Turtles movie, but I don't ever see it happening because, with the cartoons that are still on Nickelodeon, with it still being driven, more towards kids, I don't ever see that coming to light.
I don't think that's going to stop people. Look at people bringing their 5-year-old kids to rated R Deadpool movies. Like, I don't really think. I think we live in a time right now where everyone lives with and I don't mean everyone, but a lot of people live with a facade, a fake wall up in front of them, where out in public, like, oh man, this is so terrible. Like, we got to be wholesome and love everyone, bring everything together. But behind the scenes, they don't care. Like, it's like, sure, go play that violent video game, or sure, go read that violent book, or you got kids looking at people getting blown up on the internet, and people getting shot on the internet and things like that. And I think behind the scenes, it's not as PG and wholesome as everybody wants, and that's why you have these parents who you normally see going, oh, I'm not taking my kid to a rated R Deadpool movie. They're the first fucking ones in line with their kid and a big thing of popcorn waiting to see it.
I agree.
It's just a weird. I just think people put on this facade in
almost like they have to say it.
Right. Exactly.
They don't mean it, but they actually have to say it just to fall in line with with society now. Like, you have to say, "Oh, that's horrible," when you actually, yeah, you're right. When you don't really give a shit.
But call me crazy. But I'm gonna throw this out here. I'm gonna say 4 years, there's gonna be 4 names that are synonymous with the Joker:
Kyle
Cesar Romero, Heath Ledger,
Kyle
Jack
Stinson,
Nicholson, Joaquin Phoenix.
I agree. I think Joaquin's gonna kill it.
Yeah, I think he might even do a better job than Heath Ledger. I think I like Heath Ledger's Joker a lot, but I think he gets a lot of leeway because that was his last his real last movie, and he died somewhat after that role. So
I don't know. I can agree where you're coming from there, but man,
I think he just killed it.
Oh, he killed it in that role. I think that's one of the best roles for a dark character, whether it's comic book or anything. Like, there's certain roles. This is when an actor should win an Oscar. When you forget who that actor is when you're watching it, when you totally forget. Like, perfect example is the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker, and another example that this is just throwing out there to kind of give an idea of what I'm saying. In Training Day, I forgot that Denzel Washington was Denzel Washington. He was playing such a good acting job, doing such a good role, playing that evil character. You hated the guy. With Heath Ledger's Joker, he was doing such a good job of playing that role that you forget that you're watching the superstar actor on the screen. And I think that, in my opinion, when I think of the Joker, other than seeing the comic book image, I think of Heath Ledger. I think it's going to be very hard to top that role, but I think Joaquin Phoenix is a big a nut job as any, and he might be able to pull it off.
I think what hurts Jared Leto so much is he went there's method acting, and then there's going too far into it, and like the shit you hear that went on behind the scenes on the set of Suicide Squad.
I heard a lot of that was actually just bullshit.
I don't know. He gets,
like, him sending funky gifts and shitty things to people, and like Will Smith and stuff. I heard that was actually made up.
Really?
That was actually just a joke. Like, Will Smith was just like joking around.
I think where he fucked up a couple things, and I don't think the majority of the backlash is from him, but I think a couple of things that he did that I didn't like. That stupid Rick Ross music video was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, so that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And then I think that they pumped up that role so much, and then they only gave you like 2 scenes with them. So that was the biggest part for me. They really pumped that character up. And it was, in my opinion, I thought the style of the character knocked it out of the park. He played on the whole punk rock style, which I like. And I think he also played a little bit to the Dark Knight Returns style of like that Joker in that white suit, the silver kind of face and all that stuff. I know people didn't like the tattoos. I thought it was cool. But I think that the problem is that they really fucked up by not showing us the footage. Like, why aren't they releasing those extra scenes? From what I heard, they filmed almost like a half of a movie just in Joker and Harley scenes that they didn't show.
I heard there's a director's cut out that's got a bunch of those scenes that you can see now, and it's actually a lot of people have actually come back to say just recently here in the last couple of weeks that before you keep hating on the Jared Leto Joker, that you should actually try to find those scenes and actually watch a lot of them, and it'll actually give you a different perspective on it.
almost makes you wonder, like, how he got the ability to get another movie. Like, if it was that bad and those scenes that people did see behind the scenes weren't good, why would they give him another movie, you know? So I kind of feel like they had to be good. I know that there was a couple people, what's her name, that played Harley, said that those scenes were absolutely horrific to act in because they felt so real, and Jared Leto's Joker was so terrifying. So I don't know. I
mean, I give Jared Leto a lot of shit because it's in his Joker a lot of shit because it's really the only representation of that character from his acting style we have is what Suicide Squad is. And I think Suicide Squad as a whole is responsible for why people hate on that Joker. And
you're right.
The way they edited it and the way they used it and how they kind of like they really mishandled the Joker Harley relationship.
Big time.
They could have handled that so much better and done it so much better. I mean, I didn't mind the tattoos as much, but the laughing with like the only one that bothered me is the giant mouth on the hand, and he puts it over his face when he does the Joker laugh. And I mean, I'm down to see what he's got, but it something tells me that if he's got to produce it and he's got to put up money for it and he's pushing it, it almost feels like he feels like he needs to redeem himself. Like he feels like he's getting shit on for that role, that his personal ego is forcing him to try to redeem himself.
Because, yeah, that could be it. You could be right.
You know, he's known for Jared Leto, you know, Requiem for a Dream, Dallas Buyers Club. You think of all these great movies he's been in, and then you're like, okay, the Joker, and everyone's like, ooh, and that's where everyone cringes. And you know, at some point he was so into that role and he was so adamant about that role, and he was very vocal when the movie came out about, hey, you guys, you know, I'm getting shit on here and you guys cut half my footage out of the movie, that it almost feels like he needs to redeem himself by doing this movie.
Yeah. You know what is another thing, and you guys have talked about this. I keep on bringing up things that you've talked about in previous shows, but like I said, you know, I do listen to the show. I enjoy it a lot. So one of the things that you talk about is, you know, a lot of these movies that are tanking, one of the things that I've noticed, and maybe you guys have caught on to, is they always seem to be those movies where they have a director come in, he films 75% of the movie, they kick the director out, they bring another director in, and then the movie turns out to be shitty. Solo was a great movie in my opinion, but you know, that's another one of those movies where the director came in, did his job for like half the movie, and then they bring in Ron Howard. Suicide Squad, Justice League. I hear the Justice League, the original Justice League with what's his name? Snyder was absolutely amazing, and I don't understand why they aren't releasing that on DVD or, you know, Blu-ray. So these movies where these directors, you know, come in and they do half the movie or 75% of the movie, and then the screening doesn't go well, so these big movie companies go, oh, we need to get rid of him and do some reshoots and recut the movie. And it's like, no, there's a reason that you gave him the movie to begin with. He has a vision, and now you guys are just botching that vision.
Well, I think if you're going to change directors, they should just scrap it and start over. Yeah, you're going to take a hit, but you're more likely to come out on top better in box office numbers than you would trying to like Suicide Squad movie. Like, you look at Suicide Squad, and we've said before, it's literally, you can pinpoint up to the second in the movie where you see the first person edit it, and then when they switch editors, because the tone of the movie completely changes.
I think they saw Deadpool and they went, we need to make this more rock and roll and funny. And that movie was supposed to be dark and, you know, really dark humor, and it wasn't just supposed to be a copy of Deadpool. And that's what DC Universal wanted to do, and they fucked it up.
Because in that movie, they had an original edit, and then everyone keyed off on, you know, they took a key off of how everyone reacted to the trailer, and everyone was like, man, this trailer is awesome. So then they got the guy that did the trailer to come back and re-edit the movie. So he edited the first half, and then the original editor did the second half, and you can tell, like I said, right up to the moment that it changes.
It's like two different movies.
Right.
And that's sad.
like my problem with these movies is like the Joker spinoff, and you got Venom coming out, and you got Morpheus, and they're trying to get a Silver Sable and Black Cat movie, and all these movies going off is how well do these characters survive without their source hero? Like these are anti-heroes and villains. So you have like Venom. How do we see that movie standing on its own without Spider-Man?
I think it will stand on its own because they're gonna end up bringing Spider-Man in because of this whole new merger. But I think you're right. I think it would have a. Tom Hardy's my favorite actor, so I'll go see anything he puts out. But I think that you kind of keyed on it. Some of those movies, unless they don't have those big names, a lot of people out there aren't going to go see them.
And like, how do you explain the symbiote and the way Venom looks? Because the way he looks, the reason he looks the way he looks is because it's a direct adaptation of how the symbiote was over the Spider-Man when Spider-Man was in the black suit.
Yes.
So it's that's why he takes that form. So how do you explain it? Like, that's why it's still in the comic shoots webs, and even when Eddie Brock has him, he still shoots webs for a time before he starts using the symbiote to web sling and things like that. So you have these core instances that make the character who they are that you're going to be missing from these films that I think are going to dramatically impact the way the audience perceives the film because they're not there.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Why should you care about Morpheus, the living vampire, or Morbius, the living vampire, without Spider-Man? Like, why do you care about him?
Are they going to do Morbius a solo movie, or is he going to be
It's a solo movie.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. And I heard they decided not to do Silver Sable and whatever Black Cat. I heard they canceled that.
Yeah, they've shelved it for now because of the merger.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing that's going on with big budget movies and these big movie companies. I think that the movie audience has too many things to choose from nowadays, and it's not about going to see these movies in the theaters anymore. I would rather see movies at my house on Kodi or whatever, Netflix, Hulu, than I would go to see it in a theater. And I think a lot of people are becoming that way too. So I think that you only have one or two movies a year that really make a huge profit, and the rest are struggling. And I don't think it's because every single one of them is a bad movie. I just think that the way that audiences are watching and what audiences that have to choose from is changing so drastically.
Well, we have so many options now. We're flooded.
Yes.
And since we're flooded, you end up picking and choosing it. It's like when you went from having 4 TV stations to watch TV to having 200. You don't watch you miss a lot of good things because there's just so much you just can't. It's too much to keep up with. And a lot of good stuff gets swept under the rug for that reason.
Well, and I think they're missing the point too. Is you look at these movies, Spider-Man. We just found out that the next title of the next Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man: Far From Home. We know that Jake Gyllenhaal is coming in to play Mysterio. You're getting all these other villains that are going to get so much more shine, and people are going to want to go see because it's part of the main Marvel line than they are like Morpheus. He's a great villain. He's an awesome villain. His story in the comics and even the animated series was amazing. Like, they could make that an awesome movie, but you're gonna like hope, potentially hurt his character, hurt his sales because you're gonna give him a standalone movie before you try to introduce him in a Marvel movie, in a Spider-Man movie.
I think that the only way that they can do that the right way, and I just now thought of this, is Morbius had a huge run as his own character outside of the Spider-Man universe in the 70s and the 80s in Marvel, that Marvel Monster Mag, and in where he teamed up with Ghost Rider and Man-Thing, and there's like a Legion of Monsters or whatever, and those were really dark, scary comics back in the day, where you had a lot of the artists, the old horror artists, doing those books, and they killed it, man. And if they make a Morbius movie dark and like a horror movie, I could see that working, but they have to do it that right gritty way, like you were talking about with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think, like Venom, Morpheus. It's hard to say what. I mean, I could see giving him a spinoff movie after that. Like me, I'm a huge advocate, and I'll scream it from the mountaintops. I want to see Kraven's Last Hunt.
Hell yeah.
I want to see Kraven's Last Hunt on the big screen in a theater done by Marvel. I don't want to see them give Kraven his own standalone story. I want to see that movie played out on the big screen with Spider-Man, and that's what I'm worried about too is with them giving all these different villains spin-off movies to make this bigger universe. When do they come to Kraven and they're just like, man, this isn't the movie I want.
That's the other thing. They're gonna have to decide what, like with the whole thing with Star Wars, them deciding not to do the standalone like Boba Fett movies and other Star Wars movies. I think that's a horrible decision. They need to decide, okay, certain movies we can't put as much money behind. I mean, Deadpool killed it with the amount of money on that they spent on that first Deadpool movie. You don't have to spend millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on these movies to make them good. You just got to have a good writer and a good director and somebody who knows how to direct a good DP. You don't have to spend all this money. And I think that they, instead of shelving these great ideas and great movies that they can make, they just need to figure out a way to make them profitable.
And I think it's hard because I think a lot of what drives this movie is Marvel, and people know the MCU versus a Sony Marvel movie versus a Fox Marvel movie. Like, I really think.
Well, with the merger, I mean, it can be interesting.
Who knows what's going to happen with the Fox Disney merger? That's gonna shake everything up, and I think you're going to see, like, Sony was very, very hesitant to come to the table with Spider-Man, and I think their return on investment with what they got back from Homecoming and what they're getting now for the hype for Far From Home, and just what happened at the end of Infinity War and the way people are talking about that. I think they're capitalizing on return on investment, and I think you're going to see them come to the table if after July 27th, when Fox votes, if it goes through, then I think you're going to see Sony come to the table and be like, listen, we need to make more of a deal. Let's work something out here to be for us to be able to use these characters too. And I think you're going to see a lot more shifting going on than what we currently have.
Well, when Marvel comes out and brings Silver Surfer on that big screen, I can't wait for that moment. I've been waiting for that for a long time to be done well. And I think, oh man, if he shows up at the end of Avengers Infinity War, Part 2, could you imagine that? I know they've already filmed it, right?
Yeah, where we get a true Galactus and he's not a giant cloud.
Oh man, they could just turning fanboys. We never thought we would see Avengers, but what's coming is just, it can be done really, really well. It can.
I think secretly behind the scenes, there's more to this merger than we know. And I think there might have been a deal struck that has been hush-hush and kept lock and key because, you have Marvel saying that they're going to use the Skrulls in the Captain Marvel movie. So, Fantastic Four villains. And I know that the Skrulls have been all throughout the Marvel universe, but I think there's been underlying things there for years that they've been preparing for this. And I think the next phase of Marvel movies, you're going to see it all come together, and you're going to realize that, okay, this has been in works and this has been planned for a lot longer than what's been out in the media.
Well, go ahead, Kyle.
I was saying, so you think this whole merger, this whole talk has been behind closed doors for a long time?
I think so, because Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox, he's very adamant about his shareholders going with the Disney bid. Once Disney outbid Comcast again, Comcast still can come back with another bid, and they're trying to partner with another company that owns half of Fox now to rebid. But he's urging all of his stockholders to go with the Disney bid. He wants to go with that Disney bid. I think there's something there that's been underlined and placed for a long time that we just don't know about, and that Disney and Marvel Cinematic Universe, they have a contingency plan if this doesn't work. But also, I think they've been laying this groundwork for this to happen for a long, long time. I think there's been talks about this happening since X-Men 3, failed, and then you had Days of Futures Past. I think Fox was trying to stay afloat, like saying, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do when they put out First Class. And then kind of when you got to Days of Futures Past and in the way that went, and then you had the last X-Men Apocalypse and the response that get. I think that's when the talk started to become more and more real.
Oh, I mean, as everything was growing in popularity, as people were filling up movie theaters, you think that's when the talk started?
No, because your Deadpool is really the only movie that's selling out for Fox. Like you didn't hear much of a fun. Days of Futures Past is a hit or miss movie. I know you liked it, but
it did really well in the theaters.
There's a lot of people that hate it.
That's my favorite X-Men movie.
Days of Futures Past?
Yeah, by far.
Oof. Oof.
I know, man. I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while. I think that movie was so good. I like the way that they bridged the two different universes. You know, the original X-Men movies, you know, with Logan and Dr. Xavier, and then they did the time jump to the First Class. I thought that was genius. I thought that it was so much darker than any other X-Men movie. The only thing that they fucked up on in that movie was letting what's-her-name play Psylocke. That was such a mistake. I know every fanboy's dream was to, you know, that was everybody's fanboy's wet dream.
That was Apocalypse. That was Age of Apocalypse.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. Okay, back to Days of Futures Past. Anyways, it was that movie was so dark, and the way that they kind of ended that movie, the soundtrack for that movie was killer. The DP for that movie was killer. That was a good freaking movie. Now I realized that it was nowhere near like the comic book, the real comic book Days of Futures Past, and all that stuff. So that I can understand if that's where you're coming from, because that was such a integral part to a lot of our X-Men childhood, that storyline. So especially even with the cartoon. So I understand where you're coming from if that's your reason, but I don't think it was a bad movie.
My reasoning is I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities. I don't like the fact that Kitty Pryde is the one that's sending people back in the past. I don't like the fact that they just all of a sudden gave her this new power that's not explained. That if you're a Kitty Pryde fan, you're like, where did this come from? Yeah. I know in the comics she's the one who goes back. I'm okay with them sending Wolverine back, and it makes more sense.
Yes, and so does but they had to do it a certain way to make sense. You just said it. There's always going to be a little bit of the fanboy, thing where it's going to be a little different. They have to do it that way because the majority of the people out there watching these movies don't know the comic storyline. I mean, like, I spend a lot of my time after a major comic book movie comes out. I spend a lot of my time at work explaining. People come to me, explain to me how this happens in the comics. Explain to me how this happens in the movie and why it's different. Because they want to know afterwards, because they know I'm a comic book guy, but they have no idea. It's unbelievable how many people just don't know.
No, people just like to see the movies.
Yeah, and you're both 100% right, but like their reasoning of people don't know who Rachel Summers is. I don't care. Nobody know who knows who Warpath is. Like, who knows? The Psylocke no one really knew Psylocke except for fanboys, and then that's when the casuals caught on to it after that, and it's like who knows about Pixie and all these people. Like, why not just bring Rachel Summers in and have her do her thing, keep it to how the book was in that standpoint. Like, I understand making subtle changes, and I hated the way the Future Sentinels looked, and I hated the way the basic Sentinels looked.
Yeah.
I was just like from a plot standpoint of just story, it's a great movie, but there's parts of me that pick it apart, and I just can't enjoy it on the level I want to. And I'm like, that's kind of shitty that they did it that way. Okay, and I don't know. I'm like,
I was seriously let down by Apocalypse, though, and for just two reasons. The one I brought up about Psylocke and how shitty they made Apocalypse look. And Oscar Isaac did a really good job with what he was given, but man, he looked so stupid. And that character is one of my favorite all-time villains, and they could have done such a good job with that it just looks stupid.
I think that with most villains in a lot of these movies, that they just, I think they they get close, but it just seems like sometimes they just miss the mark with a lot of these villains.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it with Ultron too.
And I think that's the biggest gripe about every Marvel movie is the villain and how bad the villains have been. And that's why I think Infinity War is such a game changer, not only by the way it ended, but just the fact that they made you connect with Thanos. They made you care. There were times where you were sympathetic for him and his story and what's going on. And it kind of started that in Black Panther with Killmonger.
Yes.
And I think you're gonna see that going forward, where I think Marvel's found a new formula for doing their villains, to where you're gonna connect with that villain a little bit more through the course of the movie.
You know who I think kind of made the big movie and these big entertainment companies figure that out? I think Robert Kirkman made him figure that out, because I think Robert Kirkman is very good and did a really good job. Unfortunately, they didn't go that way with the TV show, but I think when the TV show got big, a lot of those big production companies went and read Walking Dead. And I think that the way Robert Kirkman made you hate Negan so much, and then slowly made you like him, and he turned into be that character where you're like, okay, he's becoming like the anti-hero, the Punisher type character, you know? So
see, I'm the opposite. I've loved Negan since the day he showed up. Since the day he bashed Glenn's brains in, I've been a huge Negan fan.
Well,
From
yeah,
the comic.
And the comic.
You've been a fan of like his character, but like, I think that, I don't know, did you see him being an anti-hero, ending up being an anti-hero? Or I always thought that he was going to end up dying some way like the governor died, you know? They're going to.
Yeah.
So like, I never saw him. Kirkman's so good at that. You know, him and George R.R. Martin are so good at making you worried about nobody's safe, and then making you, you know, like George R.R. Martin did the same thing with Game of Thrones and the Kingslayer, and, you know, you hated his guts. And then now, I mean, he's a lot of people's favorite quote unquote hero. He's becoming the person that might save it all. You know what I mean? He might end up being, you know, that prophecy that saves the whole thing. So I think that shows the signs of a very good writer to make you flip on something so and care about something so differently, a complete 180 with how you write that character. So hopefully that people are taking note of that, and that's why these villains are becoming more anti-heroes than villains.
Well, I think there's three big writers in the comic book industry right now that are good. You can credit with that, and I mean, feel free to disagree with me wholeheartedly if I'm wrong. I think Brian Michael Bendis, Scott Snyder, and like you said, Robert Kirkman, they all have an uncanny ability for you to latch on to characters and care about characters that normally you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're 100% right.
Like there's just something with like Scott Snyder. I think you've always had that underlying Joker Batman relationship, but I think with Death of the Family and then Endgame, Scott Snyder had this uncanny ability to bring that underlying something out to where you felt more for the Joker, especially in Endgame, especially after he had like everything erased, and you kind of like started to feel for him more. And then when he shows back up in the Bloom saga, you kind of get that, you know, love for him again. Like, oh man, like you're drawn to him for some reason now.
To me, the Joker is the only villain that gets anywhere near the throne that Darth Vader has. And that's for me. And I think one of the reasons why, it's the same reason why Darth Vader is such a great villain to me, is that the relationships. So for me, you know, you look at the relationship Joker has, that he only does what he does. He doesn't want to kill Batman. You know, he considers himself that anti-Batman that needs to be there to make Batman who he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the yin to his yang.
Exactly. And then with Darth Vader, it's the same type of relationship where he was the prophecy, that he was the main guy, and he became the bad guy. So there's that relationship where he doesn't want to end the world. He doesn't want to kill the hero. There's a relationship there, and whether it's crazy or whether it's some other thing, to be able to write that role in a good way, like Snyder did, that Batman run is up there to me with Frank Miller's Batman run. It's up there to me with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run. It's one of those runs that I think will go down as changing comics for the better.
Well, and I think that's why some of these characters are so iconic. Like you can't have you have to have a strong villain to meet a strong hero. Like, you know, you said Joker, Darth Vader, Green Goblin, and then Lex Luthor. Like that's like those four guys right there. It just that's why those characters are in those heroes are so popular and those books sell and they're like known the world over. It's the relations. It's
yes, yeah, good shit, man.
But yeah, I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on kind of like the movie thing and what's going on with Jared Leto and if you see it hurting these characters or you know, making them bigger and more known, I guess.
Kyle, are you gonna buy a ticket?
Oh, of course.
I'm right there with you, man.
I gotta support it. And you know what? You know what? It seems like a lot of these guys, like, I mean, like, even, you know, the first time Ryan Reynolds played Deadpool, he didn't do a very good job. I mean, and it was the way it was written.
Exactly.
So it was almost there, and it was too much to it. It really wasn't. And then he got to do it again, and he fucking nailed it. And it's just like with Green Lantern, he didn't do that. I mean, I didn't think it was that bad of a movie.
Well, when they came out and they said that Geoff Johns kind of stepped down because he wanted to, I mean, they said he's got a new role that he's doing, but it sounds like he stepped down because he really wanted to put everything he has behind the script for Green Lantern Corps. And that is my all-time favorite story arc in comics is Geoff Johns' Green Lantern saga. That, for me, that changed my way I look at comics. I think Green Lantern Rebirth is the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest comic story ever told or written. And he had such a there was a real big reason for him to write it the way he wrote it and to do it the way he did. He had a lot of heart behind it. If people don't know the story, his sister passed away in a plane crash, and there was a lot intertwined with that in the story he wanted to do for Green Lantern. So he had a reason to do what he did. And if he stepped down from his role, where I'm sure he was making a ton of money, just because he wanted to put a lot of effort into writing the Green Lantern Corps script and storyline correctly, man, that's probably what I'm most excited about coming up.
I think for that movie to hit the way they wanted to, I think you got to move away from Hal Jordan, and you got to, you know, look at going in other directions. Well,
I think that in a way, you're right. I think that the idea of doing a Hal Jordan, John Stewart initial movie, you know, like the Lethal Weapon type storyline, is the way to introduce them. But Hal Jordan is the essential Green Lantern character, and he's the reason. I mean, he's my Batman and Hal Jordan are my two favorite DC characters, and Hal Jordan's Green Lantern saga. You're right. It's going to be hard to write the history that they have behind Hal Jordan for the movie. But I think Geoff Johns has so much behind doing it for Hal. You know, that was his whole reason for writing Green Lantern to begin with. And as long as they do it the right way, you're right. It's going to be hard for them to do it, but if they can do it the right way, they're going to have to bring in John Stewart with them.
Well, and it just depends on who they try to target, because a lot of the adult generation now that are going to see this movie, they grew up with John Stewart as their Green Lantern. So
yeah, it's crazy, isn't that weird? Like, this is how, you know, we were talking before the show how we're getting old, and that's how I know I'm getting old, when, you know, people's Green Lanterns or people's, you know, their characters are based on these cartoons that were after my time. Now, don't get me wrong. I grew up on Batman the Animated Series and, of course, G.I. Joe and all that stuff. So it's not just because they were cartoons, but I definitely didn't grow up on, you know, Teen Titans Go and the Green Lantern, the John Stewart, the Justice League cartoon. So it's very weird to start hearing that, like, oh, that's the reason why they're choosing that character, because that's what people associate with Green Lantern is Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But well, we've been doing this for 2 hours now, and I think this has been great conversation. We want to do a little before we end the show. We want to try out a new segment on the show. It's called "What Would Kyle Do?" And I posted this, and you're more than welcome to chime in on this too, Brian. I actually welcome it. So what we did is we're gonna have a new segment on the show where we ask you to submit questions or situations to us that you are having a hard time trying to answer or figure out on your own, and submit them to our guru, Mr. Kyle Stinson, and get his opinion on what he would do in that situation. We actually had 2 submissions this week, and I'm just gonna do them. One of them is more of a What the Fuck Friday oriented, but I'm gonna read it here just so everyone kind of gets an idea of what we're looking for. So I'm gonna start with this one. It says, "Dear Kyle, I'm ashamed to say this, but my pullout game was not strong in high school, and I ended up knocking up my wife. Fast forward 18 years, and my daughter is about to head off to college. Luckily, she was able to lock down a scholarship, but still needs a car and some money for things for her dorm room. Unfortunately, I'm just a working class schmuck, and I work a blue-collar 9-to-5 job and didn't inherit well. The one thing I did inherit was my grandfather and father's combined comic book collection. Now my wife is on my ass to part out my collection to help my daughter buy a car as a graduation present. As a fellow father and comic book collector, I need your sage-worthy advice. Thanks, torn between pages."
So what I would do, and you know what, this reminds me of a different story too, is I know someone else that has their comic book collection that they have growing up, and their wife wants them to sell it. And so we were sitting down and we were having dinner and we were hanging out, and I guess my role was supposed to be to convince him to sell it and then help him sell it. So when we finally sat down to talk about it, I said, "You know what I would do? Don't fucking sell them. Figure out a different way. Hang on to them. Keep them." Now, I would say if you have, say you have doubles of these books. Maybe if you have, say you have 2 giant size X-Men and you got 2, Spider-Man 129s, I would take one of those and I would sell them but in the world that we live in, and just like we were saying earlier, there's other ways that you can make money, side hustle something. So I would say don't sell them, just because first off, it's something that came from your dad and I don't know what your relationship was, but if that is important to you, you know what I mean? That's something that you have of theirs. So I wouldn't sell them just to buy a car. What kind of car does she need? Does she need a 2019? No. I would figure out a different way to be able to make that work. That's what I would personally do. I would not sell books. I mean, if I would only consider buying my books, and if this was and I've talked about this with my wife. If it's between a comic book and the lights, okay, or a comic book in our house, I would sell stuff, you know what I mean? But I think there's, you scrunch the numbers, you kind of come down, we're 9-to-5 working class schmucks too, that, money's hard to come by. I would figure out another way to hustle that money to try to get it to work. What would you do, Brian?
I'm glad that, well, I guess I would say is the decision made with his wife around or without his wife around? Because it's always funny how those decisions, you're going to stand pat on something, and when your wife or your girlfriend's standing around and it's time to make that decision, that goes right out the window when she takes a look at where you're heading. So,
well, okay, we see comic books this way as art and something we enjoy having and something we've enjoyed collecting, and some of these books we have gone to great lengths to acquire.
Amen.
And the way, and I know, like, these people I know how my wife kind of sees them as boxes that are boxes of books that are just building up into my room and in our garage and in our living room, and you know what I mean. And I think, and like, you know, the person that they wanted me to help sell the books is that's how they saw it too. They have, you know, theirs is in a storage locker, and it's and they just see it as something that's just sitting there. That's not a big deal. But what happens but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And just to go, okay, I'm just going to sell this book. So, and I get it. You know, you got to do things for your kids, and you have to, and you always, being part of a parent is sacrificing. As a parent, you are always sacrificing and then what happens is they have kids, and then you continue sacrificing for your grandkids. It's part of the contract of having a bad pullout game. It's kind of what you know. It's kind of what you signed.
You stand on the dotted line the minute your pullout game of the week.
I hear there's companies out there that are starting up, and this might sound crazy, but I want to say one of them's like Comic Collateral. That's the one that I've heard about on CBSI before, where literally if you're in that situation, you can go take your comics and, you know, shoot an email to that company, say, this is what I got, you know, and it's almost like kind of like that pawn type thing. If it's something that you just want to get money real quick, and, you know, it's something that you might want to try and work
a loan company.
Almost, yeah, exactly. But, you know, there's always ways to make money, like Kyle says. So if it's something you really don't want to sell, I think you take Kyle's advice. If it's something you want to sell, I think you hit Kyle up in an email.
Right.
Yeah.
I think also too is, you know, if it's something that you're not, that it doesn't matter to you, like, not saying that it doesn't matter, but if they're not totally important to you, I wouldn't sell as a whole. I would kind of pick and choose a few ones that, you know, even like, yeah, honey, I sold some books. Yeah. Maybe ones that you didn't care about as much. Then you're kind of meeting in the middle. Yeah, you know what? You can always say, "Yep, I did sell some books to help contribute." But
you're definitely going to lose money on some books. So I think you're hitting the topic right on the head.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell it as a whole, because anytime you sell your collection as a whole, you're not going to get what you want for them. And, you know, piece some of it out. I wouldn't sell any of it. I would figure out a different way. Fucking, you know what? Uber.
I mean, I would look more at giving the kid your car and buying yourself a new vehicle. That way you're getting that new hotness if you're selling your books. But I think like they're saying, parting it out. If you're going to do it, look at parting it out. Hang on to those key issues. And the other question is it comes down to what's in your collection. If you have a collection, I mean, if it was your grandfather's and now your father, and then your father's, and now yours, you've probably got some pretty amazing books in there. And I would search eBay and just see what you got and what you can sell and what you're willing to do without, and not sell the keys. And then the other way to look at it is, yeah, you're going to be giving her a car now, but think of the sentimental value that if, like Kyle said, when she has kids and if she has a son, and you can actually hand that comic book collection down from your grandson to your grandsons, and then that's going into the family. So it was your grandfather's, then your father's, then yours, and now it's going to your grandson. You know, it's continuing on through the family, and it's sentimental value. It's something that you can pass down to, you know, from generation to generation. So I think I gotta agree with Kyle and Bryan on this. Is you got to look at it. There's multiple ways to look at it. And I think you got to come at it from every angle before you pull the trigger and make a decision of whether or not you're cool with parting it out and still having some of it, or not having any of it.
And another thing I've learned too, and this is with all people, if you say you can't afford it, that means you kind of really don't want it. Because if you really want something, you have always figured out a way to acquire it.
Well, right. And
I mean, like, not like I want to fucking, you know, I want a gold-plated car, but with things within reason. Like if you say, yeah, I want that, but you never really get it, you didn't really want it. But if you figure out a way to do it, if you really want something, people always truly sit down and figure out a way to do it, and they figure it out and they make it work. So I think if you really want to do it, you'll figure it out. You know what? Uber Friday and Saturday nights. There's a cool $400, $500 a weekend. Buy her a '99 Civic. You'll be good.
Lyft. Run some Lyft. You got the poor guy out there working doubles as Uber and Lyft.
Hey, it's part of the sacrifice. That's what happens when your pull-out game was weak.
Pull-out game. They have devices to prevent that. They're called condoms.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah, but
let's put a brick wall up on something we enjoy.
Right. I think that's the best advice. I mean, I couldn't say it any better than what you guys said. You got to look at it from many angles before you pull the trigger and just be like, oh, I'm gonna sell out of it. Not only just sentimental value, but some of those books, depending on what you have, like if there's good stuff in there, like even early Spider-Man, early Batman, early Superman, even if it's not Action Comics #1, early stuff, that's gonna be, you're gonna sell it, but it's gonna cost you an arm and a leg to get back, and it's not gonna be the same book that your grandfather and your father held. It's not gonna have the same sentimental value. So I think I'm sure you're a collector. If you're a collector, you always, and that's the thing about collecting, you always know what's in your collection. You know what books are to sell, what books not to sell. Okay, I can sell these ones and make some all right money. You know. And that's kind of what I would do if it's truly like an internal battle with you and your wife. The struggle is real.
The struggle is real. I would, because most times, it's kind of like guns and whatever else you collect. If you told your wife what you really paid for them, she'd be pissed. So, what they're worth. So and you know which ones to sell. If you really have to come down to sell it, then just do the middle of the road ones. Just do it. Because I know she just looking at it as a box of comics. If you just sell some, you've made her happy.
Sell the shitty ones.
Sell the shitty ones. And what are you doing? You're right, honey. I decided to sell some of these off. You don't have to include you don't have to be like, yeah, but I'm only selling my shitty ones. She saw you mailing the books out. She sees the PayPal money coming in, the transfers. She sees the money. You're doing your job. Everybody wins.
Amen.
But, yeah, that's how I'm in the same boat. Like I was talking to my mom about something a while ago, and I was like, "Yeah, I need the money to do this," and she was like, "Well, why don't you just sell some of your comic books?" And I was like, "No, they're collector's items. They got sentimental value to me. I don't want to sell them." And she's like, "They're just comic books." I was like, "Why don't you sell some of your China dolls?" No, exactly.
Yeah, it's
the same thing. So, but yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I couldn't say it better myself. I think that's some sage-worthy advice there from both of you.
And that is a good question, because I know that's the battle with married couples, and being a married couple when you truly collect something. Because I mean, that's why just like the same thing when you drive down the road and you see that that older guy in a 1967 Camaro, he's divorced, or what I mean? Because when you do something like that, sometimes it puts a strain on relationships. Because
the guy that has the Camaro with the license plate that says "Kids Grown."
Yeah,
I see that all over Phoenix.
And and I can admit it. I've gotten in arguments with my wife. Like some of my live auctions now, she's friends with them, and so that she can get alerted when they go live. So and so she'll poke in to see if I'm buying anything.
She's checking up on you, huh?
She does. She's not, so, and it sucks because like some of the guys in those online auctions, they go by code names, so their wives don't know that
awesome.
It's Nighthawk's in Nighthawk at $18, and his wife doesn't know that he's Nighthawk and he can buy books. So my wife, thinks a little more outside the box, and so she just decided to become friends with him so that she can be a part of the live auction. Then her name pops up, and I'm like, fuck.
That's when your code name becomes Thrust Control.
Right? Pull out game week now. Yeah, I can't bid on anything because she sees it, and then I get a text message. I see you bidding.
Yeah.
Why don't you just work? You're at work. You don't need to be watching live comic book auctions. Just Just work.
You're like, you don't see anything.
What I'm doing at home is my business. You're at work. No.
All right. And then the second one we got for this week, this is, like I said, brace it. It's more of a What the Fuck Friday based one, but it says, Dear Kyle, I found the post about this segment on the Absolute Geek Facebook page and thought this question was perfect for you. Last week, my girlfriend, my buddy, and I went out for my birthday, and did our traditional "We Ain't Dead Yet" pub crawl. To start the night off right, my girlfriend took me to this nice local Mexican restaurant for dinner before we headed out to the bar. To get that nice base set up. So fast forward to about 1:30 a.m., our night was over, and we called an Uber as my buddy, let's call him Rocco, for the sake of remaining anonymous, was so drunk he kept falling off his chair and blacking out, but somehow managed to order our Uber. On the way home, Rocco passed out in the Uber, and my girlfriend started to complain that her stomach was bothering her. I just told her it was probably because she had too much to drink and brushed it off as nothing. She proceeded to tell me again her stomach hurt and something wasn't right. I asked if she needed to throw up, and she said, I don't know. At a stoplight, all of a sudden, the car started to smell. The driver hit a skunk or something, or something had just died inside of it. The Uber driver rolled down the windows. I leaned over to my girlfriend and asked if she just farted. She told me to shut up and got upset. We rolled up to my apartment, and as she and Rocco got out of the car ahead of me, I noticed a brown streak where my girlfriend had been sitting. I quickly exited, shut the door, and went in the house. A few days later, Rocco called me saying that Uber was charging him a cleaning fee for the stain on the seat. Should I come clean and offer to help Rocco pay half the cleaning fee, or should I toss my girlfriend under the bus and tell him she shit herself in the Uber and make her pay the entire fee? Thanks for the help and keep up the great work.
First off, I wouldn't throw anybody under the bus. I would deny. That fucking stain was probably in there before we got in there. How did he know it wasn't the last fucking Uber that he drove? It's not, like when you throw up in an Uber and they charge you that Uber cleaning fee, it happened. You know what I mean? But this guy just, he noticed it after he got home. He said, that fucking bitch. She shit in my car. But I would deny it. I would tell Rocco, listen, Rocco, that dude's a fucking liar. I think he's just trying to get you on the take, man. He's just trying to get some extra cash, man. I think Rocco needs to be a better tipper for Uber. That's what I'd tell him. You better up that from $2 to $5 from now on. Leave him a good review. But I would. Why throw his old lady under the bus? Nobody can technically prove it.
Because she shit herself in somebody's car.
Nobody knows that. They only smelled something funky. Hey, who smelt it dealt it, man. I think it's fucking Rocco's buddy who did it. I think he's throwing his old lady under the bus right now and telling us that it was her. I think it was actually him. I think he's shit in the car.
You think he's the one that shit in the car and he's just trying to pass blame?
Yep. I think he's too embarrassed to even tell us that he fucking shit himself in the car.
Well, I agree with that because I know women don't poop, so I agree with you, Kyle.
Right?
Every woman I've known does not poop. I've never seen a woman poop. I've never thought of a woman pooping.
Oh,
women don't
I've
poop.
seen a woman poop. Yeah, they do poop. That is a myth, and it is ferocious. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just got lucky with an ex-wife that liked to poop with the door open, so.
But I would actually
forget to flush, and you walk in there, and there's a floater, and you're like, God damn it!
God damn it! There's no toilet paper. Do you even wipe your ass, lady?
Yeah, right.
Jesus Christ! And we're out of wet wipes.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. You know what? I'd actually deny it, and this is just my sense of humor. I would not say anything for a long time, and then one day we'd be talking about something related, and I would be like, "Aha! Remember my old lady shit in the Uber car? Aha! I didn't even help you."
Those are always the best stories,
right? And then you can bring it up later, and then you can all laugh about it because it's been a long time. So now it's a funny story, and nobody's mad.
Or even better, when his buddy, is partying with that guy and his old lady, and he goes, "You remember that time your wife shit in the Uber?" And they're both there.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That's it. That's what you do. Do not throw your old lady under the bus. That's fucked.
That's fucked.
That's fucked. Just deny. I mean, I wonder how much she charged. I would. That's what I would say.
I think Uber's cleaning fee is like $200-$300.
Yeah, like if you puke in a car, it's an automatic $250 charge.
Yeah.
So
well, he was in the car when the smell first arrived, so he needs to think about how bad the smell was, and then you say to yourself, okay, if it was bad enough for me not to want to be in the car, how much do I need to give him on the sly to not talk about it?
Here is a George Washington to keep this quiet.
Well, I mean, literally. So, I mean, it sounds like Rocco, the guy who has to pay, was passed out. So, like, really, the only two people that know what happened is this dude and his girlfriend. Because if she was complaining that her stomach hurt, and then he asked her if she farted, and he tells her to shut up and gets all pissed off.
It sounds like
she knows. She knows she had that fucking that wet drunk farts, and she probably sharted, well, she clearly did shart.
Yeah, I was about to say probably.
Yeah, so
I wonder if it streaked as they got out, like she was sitting in the middle,
like a snail.
Yeah, like you're in the back seat and you scoot out to get out. I wonder if that's when like she made the streak. Like, was it vertical? Was it horizontal?
Now you're getting too scientific with it. Well, yeah, was it a streak? Was it just a spot? Like, was it soaked in? Like, it could have been anything. How do you know someone didn't spill a Coke back there, or like a burrito?
Like, did you follow the trail to their front doors? That's how you knew? I mean, I would just tell Rocco, sorry, I think you just got the short end of the Uber stick, dude.
I think deny is the sound sage advice.
Because why would you want to throw your old lady under the bus? Right. And you're sure as hell ain't gonna tell your buddy, yeah, I fucking shit in the car. You're not gonna fucking take the fall for it. So it looks like it's just something you. But I would totally bring it up like in like a year from now, though, when everybody can laugh about it.
Yeah, your next birthday, when you'll go out and be like, all right, if you and your old lady are still together, be like, don't shit in the car this time. Don't shit in the Uber this time. You
totally have to say, especially if it's all three of you guys together. Now, don't shit in it this time. Wear or tell her, you might not want to wear that skirt, honey. Why don't you put some pants on? Just in case you shit yourself again.
Walk around with a rolled up newspaper in your back pocket all night. When she's like, what's that for? And you'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. And when the Uber comes up, you lay down the paper. What's that for? So you don't shit on the seat like you did last time.
That would be awesome. Hey, and that goes out. To all the Uber drivers out there, buy seat covers.
There you go.
Amen.
You could roll that shit up and just toss it out and go on eBay and buy another one for like $15.
Yes.
So
good. That's some sound sage advice there from you, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm full of good advice.
There you go. So yeah, if you have any more questions or if you have any more situations where you need the advice of Mr. Kyle Stinson to get out of your predicament, drop us a line at absolutegeekpodcast@gmail.com. And the email address again is absolutegeekpodcast@gmail.com with the title, What Would Kyle Do? And we will read your questions and emails on air and get Kyle's sage advice for you. I think that's it for us tonight. Again, I want to thank Bryan for joining us and filling in for Jose. It was a great conversation. I think a fantastic show. I can't wait. We got to get you on more often. I can't wait to have you on again, man.
Anytime, guys. I really enjoy the show. And if any of you guys out there get a chance, check out CBSI Presents Tales from the Flipside and CBSI, the community itself. And
yeah, go ahead and plug your stuff and tell everyone where they can find your podcast and where they can find your community and where they can get a hold of you in case they want to know more about the flipping game.
Oh, yeah. So wait, hold on. Sorry, Jose. You're fucking fired.
Yeah, right.
Definitely the best place to go is the CBSI G Plus community. But the best way to check everything out is go to comicbookinvest.com. That is the webpage. You'll find the top 10. We do a new top 10 every week, and that'll let you know what's super hot in the spec game. Like I said, I consider it the new wizard for our this internet generation. Amazing articles. There's always good articles on the hot books for that week that are coming out Wednesday, the hot variants that are coming out, great hidden treasure, other cool articles about original art. It also has links to both podcasts that are associated with the CBSI community. You can find those there, and a link to the CBSI G Plus page. And there's also a link to the forum. The forum there is a great place to go and create a user and name and show your pickups and ask questions. And it's fun, and it's always worth doing a little homework before you start spending money.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure to link to all of Bryan's and Tales from the Flipside stuff on the Absolute Geek Facebook page, as well as in the comment section below on our YouTube channel. I again just want to thank Bryan for taking the time out of his Friday night to join us. And as always, for the Absolute Geek Podcast, I'm Matt.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Bryan.
And we will see you next time.